Welcome to Secrets from the Scene, a show for local musicians who want to improve their music, grow their audience, and learn about Minnesota's music scene. If you're interested in talking about all things music related and meeting interesting people from our local community, you're in the right place. Welcome to Secrets from the Scene. My name is Stephen Helvig, and I'm your host. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, thank you so much for giving us your attention. Really appreciate it. This podcast is all about the Minnesota music scene, and today's guest is going to be a good one. I can't wait to dive into this episode. If you're a repeat listener and you're coming back, thank you so much for your support. And on that topic, if you haven't yet already, please subscribe, hit like, leave a rating. Any and all that stuff really does make a difference to keeping the podcast going. So your support is invaluable. Thank you so much. All right. If you've spent any time exploring effects pedals, you've probably come across Chase Bliss, one of the most innovative and creative gear companies out there. Whether you're a guitarist, a synth player, or a producer looking to push your sound in a new direction, Chase Bliss pedals offer a level of depth and musicality that's hard to find anywhere else. But at the heart of these groundbreaking designs is Joel Korte, a Minnesota-based builder who isn't just making gear, he's creating instruments that spark creativity and encourage musicians to push sonic boundaries. In this episode, we're going to talk about how Chase Bliss is changing the way musicians shape sound, from deep, textured effects to the intersection of analog and digital creativity. We also dive into what it takes to run a boutique gear company, the challenges of making high-end tools feel approachable, and how musicians can use effects in new and unexpected ways, whether it's on stage, in the studio, or beyond. So if you're into sound design or creative experimentation, or you just love hearing how game-changing gear gets made, this one's for you. Please welcome Joel Korte.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate you making the time. It's been fun getting to know you a little bit pre-episode.
Yeah, I felt like I was interviewing you.
Hey, it's nice that someone cares, Joel. No, I have so many things I want to know about you, so I've been holding back my questions for this so I don't burn too many of them before the episode gets started.
Not your first rodeo, as they say.
It's not. Yeah, we're 60-ish episodes in, so yeah. And Chase Bliss is such a cool company. I shared with you beforehand that I really didn't actually know, and I'm sure there's going to be some guitarists out there that are angry with me and shocked that I didn't really know about your company until about a year ago. And when I started digging around, I was like so impressed. And I did recognize some pedals. I had seen them come into the studio before. So I was putting two and two together, but it was another one of those things where I was like, so cool that you're here locally. And I just think there's going to be a lot that we can learn about Chase Bliss. So first, let's start with a little bit of your background.
Sure.
And getting Chase Bliss started.
Cool. Yeah. The first thing I wanted to say is that it'll be obvious for people that are watching. It can be confusing for audio listeners is that I stutter. And we could talk about it the whole podcast, but we don't have to talk about it at all. But I do like to talk about it, and I do like to say something about it at the beginning of a podcast. Otherwise, I find it's kind of, people are just wondering what's going on,
Yeah, definitely.
And also the variability of the disorder can be quite maddening. And for some reason lately I seem to be struggling with it a lot, so this will be interesting. But yeah, I stutter.
This is a side tangent.
Yeah.
And we can cut this out too, but it'll be interesting too for the post-production reasons. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the software Descript.
Somebody was just telling me.
It's a podcast editing software.
Yeah.
And that's what we use. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things it does is it gets rid of any gaps.
Okay.
So if you stop for a second, it'll just trim it out automatically.
Okay.
So,
I'm gonna. Your editor's gonna. I'm sorry, editor.
No, I mean what's interesting is that basically a stutter would go away to some extent.
Okay.
It would just auto edit them out.
But it depends on the stutter, because sometimes I might be like, yeah, well, we'll see. It'll be a fun experiment,
Well, and also, I mean, obviously you don't have to use it. It's a choice, you know?
Okay.
But by default, one of the really cool things, and I guess for listeners, this is a tangent, but it's a really interesting thing because it's really helpful for social media. Really great. Because you pop in your clips and then it generates a transcript of all the words right away. And so you can have like a timeline editor like you would expect, but you can just grab a sentence and delete it, and then the timeline follows it.
Wow. Gosh, that's cool.
It's really, really slick. And so it's got AI built in that will scan the text for every time we say or like or any repetitive filler words, which everybody's uses all the time.
Yep.
And it just deletes them.
Wow.
It'll just remove them. And you got to get your like how much you want to pull out, because you pull too much out and it feels a little unnatural. But if I, for instance, stop, think for a little bit, it'll just get rid of that for a podcast.
Cool.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens automatically. But on that, why I said a side note is that if you don't want us to do that, we could also just not use it.
I don't want to make your life more challenging. I think it might be fun to try, know. In general, when it comes to this stuff, and it's funny. This is actually got in a little bit of an argument with a guy who stutters. That the message was like, if you openly stutter a lot, like you kind of can't be successful in business. I'm paraphrasing. I think if this person was here right now, they'd be like, "That's not what I'm saying," but I was like, wait a second, and he wanted to like record a podcast type of thing. And I've been on a lot of podcasts. So I was like, what's going on here? Especially because I feel like I've been struggling more with my stuttering lately. It made me happy that I'm putting my stuttering out there, especially because it's like, gosh, there's this guy that thinks that I don't exist, kind of,
Right.
Because like I've been doing this and stuttering a lot. And so, yeah, I guess it is important for me to be represented as a person who stutters. But, at the same time, I'm not like, if some of it gets edited out automatically and it makes everyone's life easier, like I don't care.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I want to get to this point again later because I do want to bring up your social media and how good it is. But, you put that front and center. And I think that, you've proven that it doesn't matter. And in some ways, it's another example, because this is a topic that we hit a lot with musicians with, self-promotion. It's like, how do I get anybody to care about my band? It's like, well, authenticity. And
that's the thing.
Man, what a great example. You just lean into who you are, take it or leave it. And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, hell yeah. And it seems to be working really well. Nobody cares.
There was a point where I feel like I said to my wife, I was like, okay, stuttering has officially been a net positive on my life, because I actually got an email from Ed O'Brien from Radiohead, wrote me this email, and one of the reasons that he reached out was because some of the work he was appreciated the work I was doing, with kids who stutter and sort of how I approached this challenge in my life. And, he's like one of my favorite musicians, and to read that, I guess it kind of felt like this warmth come over my body.
Yeah.
And I just always think back to that moment where I at this point, it sucks. It's annoying sometimes, and it's challenging, but it's been a good thing for me.
Yeah. I think it's inspiring, and another great lesson of how it doesn't matter. It's all about being who you are and being true to that. You'll find your people. Yeah. There will always be assholes on the internet. That's never going to change. And you can, if you want to cater to them, go for it. But you're getting nothing back in return. So, yeah.
One more point, and then I'll stop rambling on this. But that what you just said there reminded me of, and I'm sure I'm going to talk about him a lot throughout the podcast. But there's this guy that I work really closely with. His name's Scott Harper, and we met because he had a YouTube channel, and his moniker is Knobs, he's called. And I just loved his work. And at least at the beginning of the relationship, I just tried to work with him whenever possible. And now we work together on everything. But one of the things he said to me one time that really resonated, I'm not sure where he got it from, but we were on a walk, and it was one of these instances where, it's like you released, I don't know if it was a product or some idea that we have. And sometimes, you put so much of yourself into something and you work so hard into something and you're seeing these negative comments, and it hurts. It's hurtful.
Yeah.
And what we talked about, and then I think about a lot, he's like, what we're trying to do, like the things we're trying to do and the things we want to accomplish and the stuff that we want to make, we are hoping that it like rises to a level that a lot of people are going to be interested in it and a lot of people are going to have opinions about it. And so if that's the plan and that's the goal to some extent, then we have to be okay with people talking a lot of shit about, or people having like, polarizing opinions about it. And that's just part of it,
Yeah. The other like upside is the more people, the more shit talking, that just usually also helps your views, which is sad, but it's the truth.
Good to keep that in mind too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's almost frustrating because it's like, if we create content that has something polarizing in it intentionally, it does better. And it's like, what kind of world are we creating for that? Mm-hmm. If that's what you have to do to get attention. But that's a whole different podcast episode. Yeah. And maybe we'll get to that some other day. But let's talk about what makes Chase Bliss pedals different, first of all. For anybody that, just doesn't know, like, okay, is this just another pedal company, or like, what makes you guys different?
Like, I think there's a lot of things, but I think it first and foremost, we're trying to contribute sounds and experiences that are like sort of like novel to the sonic landscape, and I think that that's hard to do. And I think that, we would never come out with a product that's just like a chorus pedal or something, We know that people, like, if we did only that, and if it just had like one function, our customers, I think, would be like really confused, And so, at this point, we're sort of like an experimental band, and we have some people that care about what we make, and no matter what we come out with, they're going to be interested and possibly give it a try. And I think that because we're in that spot, it allows us to really take some chances. And so when we come out with something, people know it's going to be maybe kind of weird. There's going to be some choices in it that are unconventional, and it's going to be able to hopefully make some sounds that they've never really heard before.
Yeah.
And I think all of that together answers that, question.
Yeah. I'd like to add, just from my own perspective of looking at these, is I think that ultimately there is a goal from at least the marketing efforts that it's inspiring. It really inspires you to want to create something new, to push boundaries a little bit. Whereas I feel like other pedals can be a little bit more of a tool. I need this thing to get this done. That's not at all what Chase Bliss pedals are. It's, what could I do with that?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That could create something new. And what I really want to dig into is how musicians that really struggle to find something new and something different could use something like this to kind of push their own boundaries, to get out of their own heads and their own boxes. Like, playing with your pedals, I think, really does inspire, like, what happens if I do this?
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool.
I think the only thing that we're also, we're trying to be all those things that, you talk about, but one thing that I really want to avoid is like to be crazy or weird just for the sake of it. If there's no like, I could just jump on this couch or on this chair right now and start yelling or acting a certain way, and you might say like, wow, that guy's like a wild guy, but like, what's the point?
Is that art yet?
Yeah, and like we want to make it, we argue and talk endlessly about the UI, off camera earlier when we were talking about your experience with effects pedals. You were talking about how when you're trying something out, you like to like do the whole knob position. So like what's really important for me is I really think a lot about like, what does it feel like to turn this knob? Does it feel
Yeah.
good? And it should. And if it's not, like, why does it feel bad? Or why does it feel like you want to turn it more? And if you want to turn it more, what can we make happen when you turn it more? Just like all stuff like that we obsess about, because I just feel like the act of like turning a knob is like, I don't know. I just care about that, and we do it so much. We're always flipping switches and turning knobs, and
Yeah.
you were talking about how you work inside of the box, and all of this kind of relates to that as well. But I still feel like there's nothing quite like the physical feeling of like turning a switch up or turning a knob up,
Yeah. And it's important to be able to hear it changing something and starting, because as you hear it, what I was sharing before was, I love to really understand when I'm breaking into a piece of gear or software for that matter, what a parameter does. And so I'll turn it all the way down, all the way up, and try to isolate the other variables that are happening at the same time. But just so I can really understand and really train my ear to hear what's happening. Like, okay, that's what this thing is doing, and that's how this tone is being affected, and so on. It can be a little confusing if you turn something quite a bit and you're like, that didn't really do much.
And it's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on that note, part of the Chase Bliss pedals is there's a lot going on, right? There can be a lot of knobs, there can be a lot of switches. How does a musician crack this thing open? Where do they begin?
That's one thing we're still trying to figure out, actually, because it seems like once we get someone to like care about something we're doing, and they're kind of like, they kind of get the format and they understand like the ecosystem of what we're trying to do, it seems like they're much more likely to like look at what else we're doing, So it's not uncommon to see someone have like 6 Chase Bliss pedals or something, because once they kind of crack the code, and they understand what the dip switches do or whatever, then they're like, oh, this isn't so bad. It's kind of the same thing. But for someone that's first starting out with our devices, I think it can be a challenge. I don't think it has to be. So we're trying to figure out how to make our stuff as approachable and intuitive as possible while still being like super deep, And so I'm trying to remember what your specific question was before I got on this rambly little side
Well, I guess
quest
it's all kind of related to this idea of like, where does a musician start when they're exploring things, and tying that back to where it's not just, yeah, this is super crazy.
Yeah.
It's not just jumping on a chair, being wild with it, where it's not actually going to make it into something useful.
Yeah.
Where do they start to like find cool stuff, but also be able to make it practical, where they can recreate this?
So I'm probably just easiest to like talk about our most popular pedal and how I sort of explain that to people. But so we have this product called Mood, and I'm very thankful for it. It's like a hit song, right? Like we don't really know like how it happened. Well, we kind of do, but like we got lucky too, we worked, but sometimes these things just happen. And the way that it works, a lot of the UI on our products work is it's kind of like 2 pedals in one. So there'll be like one channel that one of the stomp switches activates, and then the other channel that the other stomp switch activates, and then there'll be like 2 knobs and a switch for one channel, and then 2 knobs and a switch for the other channel, and then the stuff in the middle affects each side. So once you kind of break that down, it's just like 2 pedals or 2 channels, and then the stuff in the middle interacts with both of them. And then immediately right there, they're like, oh, okay, I'm tracking that, and then for mood, the channel on the right is a micro looper that's always listening. So that is, even if someone isn't familiar with that concept, you can show them pretty easily, like, okay, you're just play whatever you want. And then you hit a button and it starts playing back whatever you were doing, but like a piece of it in a way that you weren't expecting. And then the knobs mangle and manipulate the loop. So then all of a sudden you got this sort of a bed playing that, that also your envelope on your guitar can interact with too. And so all of a sudden you got this kind of organically moving thing that is related to what you're playing because you were just playing it. So if you're playing like, in the key of C, it's like you're already kind of jamming with yourself. And it's a little weird because you weren't like, it's not like a traditional looper type of situation where it's like you stop and it's like, no, you just pressed a button. It's looping back a little bit of what you played.
Is it a bit random then?
It usually is.
Okay.
Yeah. But, and then on the other side, we have these like time-based ambient sort of effects. There's a reverb, a weird reverb and a delay, and then this really strange mode called slip mode. Then you can put onto the loop. So then that starts to doing stuff. And then you can re-record that loop with the effects on, and like it puts you in the moment and it changes, and you can lock in some of the changes if you want or not. And, but it's complicated, but very quickly you're having fun.
Yes.
And that's kind of the blueprint, I think, of what we like to do with all of our devices. But that one I think has been more successful.
Sure.
Well,
just hearing you talk about this, I'm thinking of like, oh yeah, I mean, that's such a studio tool too, right?
Yeah, yes.
And that kind of brings me to another thing I want to talk to you about, because these are beyond guitar pedals. I mean, a lot of synth players and studio nerds are going to really dig this and have fun with it. How have you seen like your user base change over the years? Or has it always been very open to everybody?
No, it was like when I started in 2013, and it was just me, it was more focused on guitar. And as I started to get feedback, from customers, but then also as the company got more successful and I was able to hire people, I started kind of seeing that the types of products we were putting out were appealing to a lot more people than just guitar players. And so then that sort of affected the way we designed and created pedals after that. And so it all just kind of like, we have our own ideas, but then, our customers really know that we respect their ideas and their feedback. So it ends up being sort of intimate in the way that we create stuff together, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that feedback is priceless. Given that feedback, what are some sort of overlooked ways that the pedals have been getting used that you hear?
I would say that some stuff I've heard that has gotten me really excited is effects on vocals. I find some really cool things happening. That's probably been my favorite.
Interesting.
As of late, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting gear lust now. That's fine.
Sorry. Putting you down a dark path.
Yeah, exactly.
I shouldn't say that. It's a light path.
That's true. It's fun.
A warm path.
It's fun. And I think to be honest, what's exciting me about it is that there is an element of like, I don't know what's going to happen with these all the time.
Yes.
And
ours are, our stuff is definitely like that.
Yeah. And
it's not for everybody.
And I do think that, right, certain situation, if you're trying to use it to do something consistently, it's probably not the right idea.
Yep.
But if you're trying to invent something new, and so for me in the studio world, where I just need to do it once.
Yep.
I got to capture one really great idea. That's exciting, where it could really make something feel fresh. And so I think for all the musicians out there listening that, are working on something and like, I just need this to be a little less dull. I think that's where these pedals could be just such a trick, like such a great secret to have in your back pocket to to pull out and add something completely new to an idea that might feel a little like trite.
Mm-hmm. What you described is almost like verbatim what this producer, he does a lot of stuff, obviously, but he's done the Lizzo records. His name's Ricky Reed.
Oh yeah.
And he I was hanging out in his studio. This is a few years ago now, but he basically said exactly that. Like, when you're in this position like he's in, you know, you have people coming in all the time. They're like, what do you got? Like, and he's like, so if you can have some tools in your arsenal, where that's kind of the point, is to make magic happen once. Because he's like, I'm tracking all the time, like when we're screwing around, and, you know, I don't think he said screwing around, but working, you know, and so, like, if something really cool and like once in a lifetime happens, like that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
That magic.
Yeah. I love that, but not to limit the pedals to that as well, because I think there's ways to create an ambience or a certain layered texture that you could continue to use for live purposes and things like that.
Yeah, and then there's like some artists that want that to happen.
True.
At, you know, not everybody, but
yeah,
you know,
but
where they want to be
pedals.
surprised even in a live context.
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
You know,
but there's other pedals that do that thing too.
Yeah.
It's not like you're trying to be everything for everyone.
exactly, and I think that's part of why things have worked out the way that they have for us too, is because there are so many guitar pedals out there that are great at doing that more traditional stuff. So, like, we don't need to cover it, you know?
Right. Let's take a minute to talk about our sponsor, Helvig Productions, which just so happens to be my studio. Are you a musician here in the Twin Cities, currently releasing music and ready to upgrade your sound? If you're tired of underwhelming recordings and want a polished, professional sound that gets people talking, we're here to help. We'll work with you to transform your next song into a production that feels impeccable, gets your friends singing along, and catches the attention of your soon-to-be new fans. And here's my guarantee. Give us 7 days to deliver a mix you love, or we'll keep working for free until you're 100% satisfied. If that sounds compelling, here's how it works. First, we'll start with a pre-production analysis where we focus on the core of everything, the songwriting and arrangement. We'll give you an honest, outside perspective to make sure your song is on track for the sound you want. And if it needs a few tweaks, we'll give you some tips and work with you to make improvements. If you want a deeper writing collaboration, we can bring in a specialized songwriter to assist. Either way, you keep full ownership of your music, no matter what. Once that's locked in, we'll jump into the professional recording and production process. This is where we capture the best performance of each part from start to finish. We'll handle everything from detailed recording to expert vocal production, editing, tuning, mixing, and mastering, plus all our best production assistants along the way. We've got top-notch gear, a great live room, and most importantly, over 15 years of experience helping artists get their best performances. This process has helped our clients build real fan bases and even land on Spotify playlists. We've got the results to back it up. Sharkoff built a fan base from scratch with over 99,000 YouTube subscribers and over 60 million views across platforms. Silver Warehouse got their very first single playlisted by Spotify, racking up over 3 million plays. Waltzing on Waves had a song from their debut album playlisted on Spotify, amassing 2 million plays. Ludwig landed sync deals with brands like Hyundai and shows like All American. And we've got over 80 5-star reviews on Google. So if that's all you need to hear and you're ready to chat, head to helvigproductions.com/letsconnect or click the link in our show notes. We'll have you fill out a quick questionnaire, and if we're not a match, we'll let you know up front. We only work with clients who are a strong fit for our strengths because we're not satisfied until you are. If this sounds good to you, click that link and let's get started. I'm excited to see what we can create together. Let's get back to a little bit of the actual Chase Bliss story, of that journey of being an entrepreneur and starting your own thing. You can kind of decide on how much of that you want, because that's a long story.
Yeah,
I'm
I'll
sure.
try to condense it to just a few minutes.
But tell me a little bit about how it's gone, because you guys are a respected brand at this point and have a huge international following, you know? Yeah, I'll let you go.
I haven't answered this question in a while, and I'll try. So I have probably like a little different perspective on it, you know, now. But when I was in college, or when I was starting college, I was, a person that really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, which I think is like, so normal at that age.
Yep.
How are you supposed to have things figured out? But I knew I wanted to go to college. So I was trying to figure that out, and I'm a musician. I had my little recording set up in my dorm and loved the gear part of it. Not that I had a lot, but like I had like a little compressor that I would just run everything through, and I just loved it. I love the feeling of, and I'm sure like you've had so many experiences, with your career of that feeling, and I was trying to, I was like, how do I work in this world, and so I started emailing some companies, asking them, like, who designs this equipment? Like, what skill set do you need to have? And they said, well, we have electrical engineers. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had a couple friends who were in the electrical engineering program. And so I guess I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this and I won't regret it, because it's going to be hard and I'll learn stuff. I didn't learn that much in college, but I learned a little bit. And, I'm already making this way too long, so I'm gonna just like pivot a little bit and just try to condense it. That's how it started, and it was February 2007, and I had about 4 months left before I was gonna graduate. Had a really normal job offer from a company that I ended up accepting, but then my brother was killed by a drunk driver, and he was living his life way differently than me. Like at that point too, it's like, even though those were the reasons I started getting into electrical engineering, by that time in my life, I was kind of like, oh, none of those companies are around in Minnesota. There's not like, I was in a serious relationship. I was like, I'm just going to get a job and, just like do that, And so when my brother was killed, he was trying to be an actor in LA. And so he was going for it, and I saw him and I respected him. We were really, really close. And like, I don't know if you've ever lost someone really close to you.
Not brother close. No.
Okay. But like, I was just like insane for a while, and in retrospect, I think it's so weird for me, because like, I don't think I didn't have any of this in me. Like, I still don't really actually think I do, but here I am, I guess. But like, I went nuts for a while, and I also was really struggling with my stuttering. I was in a period of such like deep unhappiness that I was kind of willing to do anything or try anything, because it also, life just felt so fragile. I mean, it is, but like, it's like, well, I could just die anytime. Anybody could die anytime. It's just all like, what am I doing? And so I think I just became very risky, and what started happening is, it seemed like the more risky I was with the choices I was making professionally, it's like I was being rewarded for it, So like I would do something nuts, and then it would be really good. So then it would like embolden me to make more chances. And yeah, I guess I've never really told this story like that, but that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
And I worked at ZVEX from 2008 to 2013. And by that time I had gotten to a spot where I felt like I had some ideas, and then I decided to do my own thing, and then started to build some traction online. People started, to talk about the pedals. And then I, was able to hire some engineers that were way smarter than me and could do way more than I could. I've done a lot of collaborations because I love to sort of leverage some of the skills I have with, other people and try to make a cool thing together. And yeah.
Once you had actually started up Chase Bliss, then what was like the first inflection point where you felt like, oh, this is working?
Gosh, that is a really good question, because there's so many times where I felt like it wasn't working,
Oh yeah. I mean,
But,
that's
yeah.
a default for a lot of small businesses of like,
I mean, the Ed O'Brien moment was pretty huge, actually, because that was kind of full circle for me, because I remember hearing Radiohead from my brother's room and being like, "What the fuck is that?"
Yeah.
And to have a person responsible for making that music that my brother loved, and for him to reach out and care and like want something that I made, I was like, yeah, I think whatever happens from here on out, like
Yeah.
this is important.
Yeah,
You know.
definitely. So you've mentioned, that you've done collaborations, the team, hiring people that are smarter than you and they can do other
Yeah.
things. Like, I want to dig into, I don't know what role you have in terms of the marketing stuff, because the brand design, social media is excellent. It is very well done, very attractive, very inspiring, funny, a lot of personality in the social media. Like, it's all really, really good. How did that come together? Was that there from the beginning, or is that
No, definitely not. I did have a really good designer that was helping me out, childhood friend. His name's Carl Sandusky, and I mean, that was a super fun time, right? Because I'd be like, well, tonal recall or delay, which I stole that name from The Current, because they would have the radio show. They would have a segment called Tonal Recall. Barb Abney, I think.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was I love the movie Total Recall.
Yeah.
And I was like, Tonal Recall would be a good name for a delay pedal. So, but like that process would be so fun, because I would be like, hey, Carl, make a Tonal Recall pedal with, like, I don't know, Mars, like it needs like a red planet or something. And he would I would always be so excited when he would send me like the ideas, or like 9 different versions of artwork. But then as things, the big moment, I have to give a shout out to Brent Van Horn. He was this he still helps us out as a consultant, but so I have a very, very good friend named Ryan Harding. He's actually the drummer in the band Local H.
Okay.
We were at his wedding, and Brent is his brother-in-law, so that's how we met. Brent knew branding and things, and so like we got to talking after that, and he told me some hard things to hear, to be like, man, your whole, like, this could be improved, and so it took, I think a lot of people in my position are sort of like stubborn. We're like, well, it's kind of scrappy and endearing. And he's like, yeah, I think, we can maintain all that, but there's just a lot we could do, And so it was at that point where, I talked about this guy, Scott Harper earlier, AKA Knobs, where I just respect him so much. And I think he's so creative and intelligent, and just, I mean, I could go on and on, but I would always ask, his advice on stuff. And he was a little unsure about the rebrand thing, because he liked what I had going, but it was through that process that he was like, I can't believe how much I care about this. Like I'm seeing like some of the decisions that you might make, and it's making me uncomfortable. And like, I don't know how to do. And I was like, well, dude, if you want to if you want to work more with me, there's nothing I would love more than that. So that was really the catalyst. And then, we needed a designer, a full-time designer. So I had done some work with this guy who now works full-time at Chase Bliss named Eric Niffler, who's based in Portland. So he was our designer, and we went through this rebrand process that probably took 2 years. Maybe not quite 2 years, maybe a year, but it was a ton of work. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it was through that process where it sort of informed all of that, where it was like, well, we have like a team now, and like this person does that and that person does this. And yeah, now I think the stuff we're putting out is just, I have very little to do with it, I might have an idea, or if I don't like something, I'll say it, but it usually never happens because the people that work at Chase Bliss, they don't make stuff I don't like,
Sure.
But it's all them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the dream, to have that kind of team, that just keep making things better and better.
Yeah.
And a good reminder that, even at whatever your thing is, whether it's a band or a studio or whatever, or you want to start your own pedal company someday, like having the right people around you is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to make the difference between success and failure a lot of times.
I've heard this phrase from this podcast I listened to, where this guy says, like, greatness is in the agency of others. I'm like, I heard that, and it's like, kind of feels like a shitty thing to say in some ways, but man, like I really feel like that's the case. Like for me, I think, I don't know, I'll get an email sometime and it'll be someone saying that they think, the stuff I do is really cool and good. And it's like, man, I can't take responsibility for any of that stuff. The only thing I can do is just be like, well, I guess I built the environment where this cool stuff is happening, but I'm not doing it. I'm just facilitating.
Well, how do you balance your role at this point between running operations, business, creativity, innovation?
I think it's just like really kind of handing the keys over to people I trust more than myself and think more highly of than myself. I mean, certainly there's, some things that I like or don't like, or, that, or like, I'll feel wrong. I'm like, that's just, no, we can't do that. I don't feel right about that. But, I mean, it is at this point, it's like we have 20 employees, we've got an office in Amsterdam, people working out of there, and it's a lot of work just to run the business. And so I've had some success with this, but I've tried to still do some engineering because I'm just a happier person when I'm doing that, and I do like it. So like I tried to mix that in, but there's just so much that goes into running a business of this size that I kind of have to stay focused on that. And I have 3 kids that are young, and so, that's a thing.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about like next steps for Chase Bliss? I mean, for anybody that's already not familiar, there's a huge blend between analog and digital in these pedals, and that's why they're capable of doing so many things, and they're innovative in a lot of different ways. How do you see that evolving as digital gets crazier and like more capable?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about AI earlier, and I've thought about that in the context of guitar pedals, because I think, like, I don't know when it'll happen, but I can't imagine it's going to be very long, where you'll just be able to talk to a device and be like, I want a tube screamer in front of a memory man and something else, and it'll just sound like it, And my hope is that there will always be a market or a desire for little electronic boxes with knobs and switches on them that you can interact with in real time. I think I don't know, I'm biased. I'm hopeful that will be the case. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. I guess in the near term, one of the things we're doing, we just joined forces. I guess technically it's like an acquisition, but I just kind of don't like using that language with this company called Chompy Club, and they make a little sampler. It's this chromatic sampler that is really fun and intuitive and immediate, and I think works really well with our guitar pedals. So that's an avenue that we're going down, and it's outside of guitar pedals, so it's new. But I'm always, I don't know, attracted to creating a moment that just kind of like blows people's minds. Or it's weird to say that, but like I wanna. That's always going to be like a desire for me. I don't just want to keep doing the same thing. I want to make great things, or facilitate the making of great things, because there's just so much like cheap stuff. Even if it's really expensive, I think, I don't know, there's something that's so cool and timeless about just a really well-made thing,
I agree.
So I want to do that.
Quality. Yeah. This is sort of circling back a little bit to stuff we were talking about earlier, but I was just thinking, like, do you have experience, maybe this was how you started learning more about this, or other people that you've heard, but like, because in general, there's just a lot of concepts of sound design when it comes to this sort of thing. If somebody just is interested in the general field, not specifically your pedals, but sound design, and they're using your pedals as a part of that, where do they start to learn about that? Do you have any suggestions of like where somebody should start?
Gosh, I don't want to make it just seem like I'm pitching this company, Chompy Club, but they have this little sampler called Chompy that I think is an amazing introduction to that.
Okay.
Because you can, there's effects on there, and you can sample, and how I often use it is I'll just sing into it, or I'll hit like a shaker, hit like a drum, and you can dramatically change that sound and then play it chromatically in a way that gives you other ideas, and then you can kind of explore that world. But to be honest, like I don't feel like I'm even in a position where I could give a good recommendation. It's almost like outside of my lane.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, to some extent, I think what you're saying with that sampler or anything else, that it is a little bit about just getting started and turning knobs and what does this do, and doing that. And obviously there's an unending amount of resources on YouTube if you want to go look at like exactly what an envelope is, and understanding like some of the common tools that you use and devices that you use to manipulate sound, to generate sound, to manipulate sound, and just getting some of that terminology under your belt, because some of that will help.
Yes.
If you have that base knowledge, if you have none of that base knowledge, it's going to be overwhelming. So there can be some benefit to just watching. And some
I feel like I want to ask you that question. How would you answer that?
Well, I was kind of thinking that to myself of like, I don't know. I'm sure there are good tutorials out there for that reason. My process has been, just, fake it till you make it, man. Just start doing it. And, a few things are kind of intuitive. As you start moving things around, you start to understand a couple parameters. But there's a lot that I still am like, I really should probably know this by now.
Yeah.
I've, a lot of times.
I think that's a sign of a cool person, though.
A lot of times you just use things until they sound cool, and you're like, all right, someday I'll figure out why that was the case. But, you never circle back. It's been on my to-do list for like 15 years to like get more, knowledgeable about exactly what that meant that I just did. But, sometimes you just never do. But as I'm thinking about all these things, it's like inspiring me personally to be like, I'd be really fun to actually like use this as an excuse to get a firmer grasp on some of those things, because it does feel like a really useful tool. If I want to look for something, if you're getting kind of tired and you're like, I want something to inspire me, I think that's what draws me the most to what you guys are doing, is that it's not just a tool. It does feel like an instrument that's going to inspire you to try something new.
Yeah. Almost like, I don't know if I've said this or someone at work said this, but almost like a friend coming over, like, I'm kind of in a rut. Like, what, like, do you got anything? And like, maybe you play something and they'll be like, oh yeah. It's like, that's maybe what the pedal is.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, this has been a great conversation. I have just a couple other little things left. First of all, did I miss anything that you want to make sure you explain about Chase Bliss or the pedals or anything?
I don't think so. Like I definitely I liked how you've asked the questions and like the way you phrased it, because I feel like it's I've answered things in a way that I have never before on a podcast. So like that's cool to me. But I mean, I feel like, yeah, we've covered like, kind of the core
Great
stuff. Yeah.
Well, I ask all my guests the same question at the end of every episode, which is if you want to share a tip, a secret, back to the scene, something that you think is important or something that your younger self would have really liked to have heard that, after having grown this company and doing the things that you've done that you would like to share.
Sometimes when I think about like my own music career as it relates to like Minneapolis, I get kind of, I don't know, embarrassed or something. Like I think, I don't know, and I'm sure this isn't uncommon, but like you're in your early 20s or whatever, and maybe you see someone at your show and you want to talk to them and like impress them or something because you think it's what you're supposed to do. And I don't know, what I've learned through Chase Bliss is that if you can just like believe in yourself and like put your head down and work hard and make something that you feel like is really cool, like cool creative people are going, I mean, you have to put it out there and you have to market it and you have to tell stories and you have to do the work, but people caring about it kind of takes care of it itself. Like you can't just shout at people to care about, your music. In fact, I think it probably makes people care less. I wish maybe I would have had a little bit more of that ethos with I don't know. You just get it. You get in your own head and your ego. And I don't know, maybe you think about things like more politically, like, you want your band to be like rated in a certain publication or something like that. And it's like, that's just not it. You just gotta, you have to trust your taste, work really hard, and, make something that you really think is good, or at least try to, and then fall short and then keep trying to.
Yeah.
Young Joel would be good it'd be good for him to hear that.
It's like just really focusing on your process.
Yeah.
And not so much
It's like, do you really think it's good? And if you don't, there's probably some stuff you could do. I mean, there's a whole conversation too, where it's like, sometimes you just got to put stuff out, because I'm the type of person, like I don't need to convince myself that I suck at something. Like there's enough like negative voices going in there 24/7 that you got to be careful with that, as well. But I think that there's a power there as well, where, if you're every once in a while, you do something, you're like, that is good. That's really good. And it's really good because, you also sort of hate yourself sometimes.
Yeah. And that's the testament to putting things out, because sometimes that feedback can really help. And because there's, on the other side of that coin, there's people that think everything they do is really good, and it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think everything you do is really good, that's probably a bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Sharing
This is so fun.
This was
This
great.
is such a cool space.
I think what you're doing is really inspiring, and it's cool stuff. It's high quality. If people want to get in touch with you or, learn more about Chase Bliss, where do you like to send people?
Well, if they want to get in touch with me specifically, it's just joel@chasebliss.com. But other than that, just the website, chasebliss.com, and our YouTube channel has a bunch of resources and educational materials and things like that. So, yeah.
We'll put all that in the show notes. Yeah, for everybody that tuned in, I hope you got something really useful out of the episode. Share it with a friend. If you're thinking about getting a pedal, just do it. It's going to be great. You're going to have a great time, and hopefully create some new music, some new sounds, push some new boundaries, get out of a rut, and just try to find something unique and different. I think that's all a good reason to take the next step and try something new. Joel, thank you so much. We'll see everybody next time.